Hey everyone, welcome to the 4th indie devlog episode of the 2D action RPG, Resonant Blade. Last time we looked at a new parry sword mechanic that charges chord combos, a laser turret enemy, and some tileset pixel art. If you want to catch up on the previous episodes, just click here. In this episode, I'll show you the new area of effect Sonic Pulse attack for major chord combos, a snake boss, and I'll walk you through my thoughts on how the game world is going to interact with the background music. For the sake of variety, I wanted a very different type of attack rather than the simple ranged attack from the blade beam. So I decided to go with an AoE attack. This Sonic Pulse is a shockwave of sonic energy that shoots out from the player and expands outward in a circle. The range of the attack is set to be the same as the AV field range. As with regular attacks, the player can change the resonant frequency and the color of the AoE Sonic Pulse. I added in some small lightning shock particles when the ring reaches a maximum range and then dissipates. To get a different sound effect for now, I just ended up playing back the same sword attack sound, but in reverse. It kind of works well with the expansion motion of the Sonic Pulse. So to charge the AoE attack, the player has to parry 3 enemy projectiles that combine to form a major chord. This attack will be a good alternative to the blade beam and allow the player to damage and take out multiple enemies at once. The whole idea of a segmented snake boss kind of comes from the Sonic Pulse attack itself. I wanted to have an enemy or boss that could only be defeated by the use of the Sonic Pulse. To damage the snake and eventually kill it, the player has to attack the head. But the head of the snake is going to hide its resonant frequency until it becomes stunned. And the only way to stun the snake is to strike all of its segments simultaneously. And that's where the Sonic Pulse comes into play. I created some sprites for the head and the segments of the snake, and I want to make one for the tail as well. To get the segments moving together, I created a simple rectangular waypoint system where the head of the snake will move towards a waypoint, wait for a little bit, rotate towards the next one, and then repeat the process. I added some projectiles that will shoot out from each of the body segments. Each of the segments will have a resonant frequency, and they'll cycle through frequencies that will form a major chord. That way, the player will end up having to use the Sonic Pulse attack at some point during the fight. Although their resonant frequencies will be changing at a regular interval like the laser turrets, there will be moments in the fight where all of the resonant frequencies will align so that the player will have a window to use the Sonic Pulse and strike all the segments at once. Right now, it's pretty easy for the player to just dash away from the snake, especially when it tries to close in around the player. So I figured this would be a good time to introduce status effects into the game. You know, things like poison, slow, stun, silence. This is an RPG after all, and status effects are just one of those things that you find in almost all RPGs. So I started coding in the infrastructure to support status effects. Right now I'm starting with a stun, slow, and poison. I added the behavior for the stun effect, and this can be attached to any enemy or player right now. So I added the stun effect onto the snake head itself. So when the player collides with the snake head, they'll be stunned for a few seconds. And I made it to where when the player is stunned, they can tap the left and right buttons quickly to break out of the stun effect faster. There's still a lot of work to be done with the snake boss, but I feel like it's a good start and a good use case for the Sonic Pulse. Procedural generation in video games is very common when it comes to gameplay, environment, and visuals, but not so much with the game audio. A couple of games that come to mind though that do use procedural or algorithmic music are Spore and No Man's Sky. The game audio for Spore was programmed using pure data, so all the sounds are synthesized in real time based on player action, the environment, and a bunch of other things. No Man's Sky is more of a hybrid that used recorded samples from the band 65 Days of Static, and then took those samples and stitched them together to fit whatever scenario was needed. The background music in Resonant Blade is going to be a combination of procedurally generated music and composed tracks. For most of the gameplay, I plan on having ambient music that will be generated on the fly. And the reason I'm leaning towards ambient music because it's less likely to get in the way of all the sound effects that the player will need to listen to in order to play the game effectively. The actual sounds that I'll be using to make the background music will either be synthesized from code and processed within the game itself, or they'll be imported samples of single pitches that are arranged, processed, and mixed within the game. And so having actual samples will allow for other instruments besides synthesizers, so I can add things in like a string section, a guitar, or any other recorded samples. One of the drawbacks when it comes to procedural music is that a lot of times it doesn't sound as expressive or customized or complex as a regular track can. And a lot of times it also lacks repetition, which is really important for telling a story, tying together emotions, themes, and characters. So for cutscenes, it would take a tremendous amount of work to get a procedural music system that could fit music to the second for whatever scenario was unfolding on the screen. And so that's why I think the most efficient way is to compose original music for specific moments in the game. For instance, a title theme, cutscenes, credits, and character themes. In terms of instrumentation, I want to combine synthesized electronic sounds with more acoustic orchestral sounds. And this is going to help reinforce the whole theme of the story, which I'll delve into a little bit next time. So how is all this going to tie into the sounds and frequencies that are already being generated by the Resonant Blade and enemies in the game? The simple answer is to set the sounds and background music in the same musical scale or mode. So notes from the same scale are more likely to sound consonant with one another or pleasing to the ear. The 6 resonant frequencies that are available in the game actually make up a scale called the Prometheus scale. The Prometheus scale is derived from what is called the mystic chord, a quartal hexachord, and is made up of these 6 notes. If you are interested and want to find out more about this chord and scale, check out 12 Tone's video on this topic. I chose this scale because I've never composed with it before, and I like how it sounded. Another good thing about this is that it's only 6 notes. I have to keep in mind that music and game audio is only one aspect in making a game, and reducing things where I can will make the whole project more viable in the long run. The music at the intro and outro of this video is a track I composed that could work for the game's main theme. It's mostly based on the Prometheus scale and uses a combination of electronic and acoustic instruments. To listen to the entire track, click on the link in the description below. Well, that's it for this episode. For next time, I'll try to wrap up the snake boss and go into some details with the storyline. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below if you have any questions or feedback. I'd love to hear from you guys and see what you're thinking about the game so far. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.